folks. It's Ina Hillebrandt coming to you again today with a wonderful guest, Chet Richards, who has a long line of Chet Richards in his family. That's going to be a theme for today. We're talking about more of his adventures and where they come from, because it kind of was born right in him to be an adventurer, I feel. Chet, do you want to tell us what is going on? There seems to be a hernia in this book.
Yeah. Well, that's an interesting way to start it. Yeah, I have a story in there called My Great-Grandfather's Double Hernia. And the story is told by my great-uncle, Chet, and I'm named after him. He was my father's uncle, and my father was Chet, and I'm Chet. I'm Chet second or the junior or whatever. Anyway, something like that. Anyway, so I'm named after Chet Sales, my great uncle. And he relates a story. He was I knew this gentleman when I was a little boy. He was my great uncle Chet was a pioneer, born in the West in the good old days, which, trust me, you don't want to have lived in the good old days.
Not from what I'm reading here.
Yeah, based on some of the stories that are handed down through the family. But what happened with my great-grandfather was he had a hernia. He wanted to go into the Union Army during the Civil War, and they wouldn't have him because he had a double hernia. So he had to wear a belt all the time, a special belt to keep his belly in, I guess, something like that. But that didn't stop him because, first of all, he was a woodsman. He knew he had grown up chopping down trees for a living. And so he was a big, strong, husky guy. And he just hopped on a horse and joined a wagon train and went over the Oregon Trail with a wagon train. But he didn't go as a passenger. He went as a scout for the wagon train, what they called an outrider. And he met the Mills family while he was at it and ended up, in the end of a long story, which I won't go into, marrying one of the daughters of the Mills family. And that became my great-grandmother and also the mother of my Uncle Chet. So anyway, they get to Oregon after all kinds of travails and problems with native peoples along the way and losing people in trying to cross the Snake River and things of that sort. People getting drowned there. Eventually, they managed to get to Oregon. And after some scouting that my great-grandfather did, they decided to push their way up to Olympia, Washington, because it was open territory. And they would homestead up in the Olympia, Washington area. The problem was it was really hard to get there. There was nothing but trackless forest for, I don't know, 60, 70 miles between where they were in Oregon and the Olympic area. You had to go about 400 miles round trip. You had to go way east and pick up a trail in the eastern part of what's now the state of Washington to get on the path to go to Olympia and points north from there. So my great-grandfather, because he was a woodsman, he put together a wagon party of the Mills family and some other people, and they literally built a road. My great-grandfather was named Sales. They built the Sales Road from Oregon up to the Olympic, Washington area. And that road eventually was widened, became very popular because it cut a couple of months of travel out. It turned several weeks of travel into a 3-day excursion to get from one place to another. So it was a huge advantage. But my great-grandfather didn't want to charge a fee for the road. He didn't make it a toll road like other people were doing. That road became extremely popular. It was widened. Everybody used it. The railroads came down, used it as a staging area to put the railroad in. You know, several decades later, the road got paved, probably after a lot of changes. And it continued to be a main thoroughfare up the western side of the state of Washington. The road still exists. It's now a major section of the famous I-5 highway, which stretches from Mexico to Canada.
A road I know well. Thank you so much. That's quite a bit of history. Fascinating stuff.
Well, and I'm so proud that my family was involved in that kind of pioneering work,
Well, as we talk about that, it's what struck me about you and your being an adventurer. I think it really, as I said earlier, it is just born right in you. It's kind of the way that your family, your mom too, who was from Sicily and came over here, and at a very young age, everything that they did, your parents, their grandparents, your grandparents, their grandparents. I mean, it's just a whole long line of people who think on their feet, they figure things out, and they just they persevere and they succeed in many, many, many different areas. And that is a strength of purpose, a strength of action, and a really interesting background upon which to draw for you, but also kind of interesting for other people to think about for themselves. And, what goes into being brave and also creative, really, to find solutions to problems just as they come up.
Well, as my sister says, we've got the genes. Yeah. I think I have had, I've had a lot of adventures. She's had more than I have, as it turns out, but that's her story to tell, not mine.
Right. All right. Well, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for your time, Chet. Thank you, all of you who've tuned in. You can find more about this story, which is really a lot of fun, in the book that Chet wrote of his memoirs, and it is called From the Potato to Star Trek and Beyond, Memoirs of a Rocket Scientist. Thank you so much again, Chet. Thank you all for coming to see us.
My pleasure for being here.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.